Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So, hello, good afternoon to all of you. And this is Philippe Auclair speaking from Brussels. I'm very pleased to be with you today for the second part of the MDR IVR, and this will be devoted to post-market surveillance. So before we delve into the post-market surveillance, just a reminder of the general infrastructure framework and calendar for the new regulation. So as you can see here on the screen, this is the calendar for implementation and transition, which has been published by the European Commission. This is an official slide, which can be found on the website of the Commission. So for the medical device regulation, the medical device regulation was implemented in May 2017, and it came into effect at that date, with a transition leading to a date of application, which is a full implementation, which is 26th of May 2021. So as we speak today, we're 20 calendar day the medical device regulation becoming mandatory. And then there is a soft transition which has been built in, which we also call grace period, which enable for MDD product registered under the old regulation to keep on being placed on the market, provided that they have a valid notified body product CE certificates. And then they can continue to be placed on the market after May this year, after the DOA, date of application, and 2024, May 2024, or if it's earlier, the end of the expiry of their product certificate. Then come May 2024, this will be the cutoff, and these old product, quote to quote, will not be able to be placed on the market any longer. The IVDR transition timeline is fairly similar with different calendar.
Give me a second, there's
So
another
the
call.
regular.
ठीक है, I mean देखो हम अपना स्टेटमेंट कहीं डलवा देंगे बीच में, नहीं भी होगा तो हम ये बता देंगे कि हमने जो सस्पेंड किया है.
Can you put your
Hello, can you still hear me?
Yeah, sorry, Philip. Please go ahead.
No, that's okay. It's the beauty and the difficulty of this virtual meeting. So thank you. So for the IVDR, let me renew here. The transition calendar is that the IVDR, in vitro device regulation, came into force on May 2017. So same day as the MDR, but the transition is slightly different, and the date of application, the date at which it will become mandatory, is actually May 26, 2022, so 1 year later. There is also a soft transition of grace period, which has been built in, which will go until May 2024. And this will allow products which are registered under the old legislation IVDD to be placed on the market until May 2024, provided that they have a notified body certificate. And we've seen in the previous call that this is a major crunch here, that only 20% of the existing IVD have notified body certificates, the rest of them being self-certified. So we have this grace period, but the use of it is very limited. So this was to set the scene. Let's delve a little bit more in post-market surveillance. This is one of the major module, I would say, of the regulation which has been changed. And there's multiple new requirement and change which has been built in. So the most significant is the setting up and the production of PMS reports, which will create a lot of workload, and we will get to that in the next slide. And there's an updated vigilance reporting requirement, in part with reporting criteria, but also much more important in reporting timeline. So in the next few slides, my ambition here is to give an overview of this complex subject, but also to provide suggestion on how best to comply. So this is the general framework of the PMS, and what you have listed in this box is the data that we need to produce and some of the report we need to produce. So we have benefit risk determination and the regular update. We have design manufacturing, IFU. We have update on clinical or performance evaluation. We have the update of summary of safety or performance. You have the identification of any corrective actions that need to be taken. You also have the improvement of usability if needed, based on the result of the PMS. You have also contribution to the PMS of other device and detection of trends. So now this is the data feed, I would say, and not everything is new. In fact, you have this color code, which indicate in blue what we already do, and in red what is entirely new. The three which are entirely new are essentially the regular update of the performance and clinical evaluation. This is the summary and safety of clinical and performance, and this is the contribution to other devices safety profile. Now, I would like to focus on the last one, because this is absolutely new in the regulation, and that in the reports, specifically PSUR and other, the manufacturer need to benchmark the safety of its device against competitors. Well, competitors, I would say similar devices. So there is a need to put in place a process to gather information which can be based on literature, which can be based on existing public databases, so that the feedback on what is publicly available on the similar devices can be analyzed and compared with the safety profile of our. Now, the good news here, if you see this slide, is that there's a blue. So we have a lot of information that we already have, that we already do. Now, yes, it may have to be reformatted, it may have to be put into a specific procedure or SOP under the MDR and IVDR requirement, but essentially this is nothing really breakthrough. So the attention should be focused probably in terms of data acquisition on the two red boxes, which is something which is entirely new to these two regulations. So we mentioned reports. So let's drill a bit about these reports. And this is one of my takeaway slide. This is a slide I tried to compile based on the various articles of the regulations. This one is for the MDR. I've been told it's fairly straightforward, but if there are mistakes, they clearly are mine. But here is on the left-hand. This is the list of reports that need to be maintained. So as you see, there's lots of reports which are essentially new. Clinical evaluation report, PMCF report, post-market clinical follow-up, summary of safety and clinical performance, risk management report, PSUR, periodic safety update report, or its abbreviated form, PMS report for low-class devices. So lots of reports, which will need some resources. And mind you, this is not resources to put the product on the market. This is maintenance resources and maintenance cost, because this report will have to be issued during all the lifetime of the device. What is also interesting, as you can see, is that there is a special periodicity for each report to be issued, a calendar periodicity. And this periodicity depends on the risk class of the product under the regulation. So if you see, for example, for the clinical evaluation report, it's for lower class, which is class 1, it's when needed. For class 3 and implants, it's annually. So you have an increase of the frequency, which is proportionate with the risk class of the device. What is also interesting to note, and which is a further complication, is that when you look inside a specific risk class, look at 2B, for example, you will see that the different reports do not follow the same periodicity, even within a one risk class. So there will be a lot of difficulty, and there is a lot of difficulty to maintain this periodicity, given that each report does not have the same, even within for a specific product. And one need to realize, and this probably is something which has been required by the legislator, where I have difficulty to understand why, but all these reports have a lot of overlap. If you look at the PMCF reports, it's, for example, embedded in the clinical evaluation report, and so on and so forth. So there is a complete overlap in between these reports, which will make the synchrony of these reports very difficult to make sure that at each issuance of a report, they include the latest available information. So a little bit more to come later with some advice, but this is probably the major and critical concern and source of difficulties that we are facing. On the IVDR side, the situation is similar in concept. So I will not detail all of that because this is exactly the same concept with the same difficulty. What you will see is that the reports may have a slightly different name because they're adapted. So the clinical evaluation report becomes a performance evaluation report. Post-market clinical follow-up is post-market performance evaluation report, and so on and so forth. And I have indicated the referenced article which you can refer to in the text of the directive. But the concern and the difficulty are the same. Lots of reports, need of resources, periodicity, which is difficult to align, overlap of reports, and the fact that the synchrony need to be very carefully thought through, specifically because, and it depends on the organization of each company, obviously, but in most companies, these reports will not be produced by the same department. And therefore, there is a need to have in place coordination between the various actors which will be producing the reports. So the next few slides is just a rendition that I have made. So it's not something which is directly in the regulation of how a post-market file and post-market system could be organized by class. So it builds on the report file. And by the way, this slide deck will be distributed, so you can review it at your leisure. So when it comes for MDR class 1 or a lower class of IVDR, class A and B, and this is what you have on the screen right now, the gist here is that you have your PMS plan, and the PMS plan includes, this is what you can see in blue in the second column. It includes a vigilance report. It includes a field safety corrective action. It includes a trending. So this is things that we are currently doing. And then you have this new aspect, which is collection of data on similar devices on the market. In parallel, you issue your PMCF report, post-market clinical follow-up report, or PMPF performance follow-up reports. Once everything is done, then you will update your CER, and this will be part of an overall risk assessment profile, which is viewed, as I said, under the entire life cycle of the product. And all this information will coalesce and be used to produce the top of the iceberg, which in this case will be the post-market surveillance report. Once this is understood, the next class are iteration of this one. So if you move to MDR class 2A and 2B, which are higher risk class category, essentially this is the same picture, and you will see the same kind of design and requirements here, but you have an additional one, which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, which is a periodic safety update report. I will not get into detail on this PSUR. You can go to the regulation referenced article, and the European Commission is working on a guidance on the content of the PSUR, which is a fairly complex piece of document. So this is for 2A and 2B. Now, if we move even higher and we go to the higher risk device, which are classified as class 3 and 2B implant, then you will have the same until the point of the PSUR, but you will have the need here of a SSCP, which is a summary of safety of the summary of safety and clinical performance of the product. This additional report also is required to be with notified body and will be posted on the UDAMED, which is the public website which gives details on the medical device. A little bit more to come in one of the next slides. And for the PSUR, which we have mentioned, for this high-risk device, it will have to be uploaded on the database UDAMED and made publicly available. So this is the most comprehensive, starting from the class 1 and going to this one. When it comes to IVD, here as well, this is similar with addition. We covered class A and B of IVD. When it comes to class C, well, you will have the periodic safety update report, and you will have also the summary on safety of performance of the device. So this is a similar context with more reports to be made available as the classification goes up and the device are considered to be at risk or more risk. And then you have finally the class D, which is the highest class in IVDR. So under the regulations, this is HIV, Chagas test, and newly in this regulation, all the COVID-19 assays. So this is also very similar. And like for MDR, the PSUR will have to be uploaded in UDAMED, the central database. So this is a lot to digest, but I'm sure you can review that at your leisure when you receive the slide. So now comes the difficulty I mentioned. How to manage in synchrony all these reports, given that there's overlap, given that the periodicity of each report is different even for a single device. And given that these reports are issued in most of the case by different departments and different industry actors. So what do we do at this stage? And I believe that if you have been adapting your system, you probably are at the same stage. It's to adopt a modular approach. So all the aspects which overlaps can be maintained in different modules, which are updated on a regular basis. And when created a report, a CER, a PMCF report, a PSUR, you take the module, which is updated, and you plug it in your report so that the report will always be updated to the latest information which has been collected. This is a good way of handling it, but this is very manual. And the storage of this module, whether it is Excel, whether it is Word, which can be done on a drive, on a SharePoint, is really prone to mistakes and to failure. So I would like to try to look a bit with a vision to the future. I think all these modules, SharePoint, whatever, are really unstructured data. And if we look at other industry which are used to handle big data, there are some other possibility which require heavy IT investment, obviously, but to move from unstructured data to structured data. And some of them already exist. It's used, for example, in some industry for customer relationship management, for enterprise resource planning, and these probably would be useful to make sure that we have a more systematic, a more robust, and a more automatized production of these reports. And here we need to learn from those who have already started using these structured data. For example, the pharma industry or the aviation industry. So this certainly is not for now. It's not for the next 20 days before the date of application of the MDR, but in a few years, I am convinced that we need to work on moving towards this structural modular approach. Okay. I will move on now to vigilance reporting. So vigilance reporting, what you have on the screen here is what exists on the current directives, whether they are MDD or IVDD, and this is in blue on this slide. Sorry, my phone is ringing. It will stop in a few seconds. And in gray on the right-hand side, you have the provision of the new regulation. So very similar, very little modification, but very big changes. So if you look at the two main category, I mean, there's no change. So serious public health threat, death, unanticipated serious events, they're reportable within the same time frame, which is immediately, but no later than 2 days or 10 days before the awareness of the event. Now, what is the changes for the other serious event, which do not fall in the two previous categories, which is actually the bulk of all the events? And for those, the report is not within 30 days, but it's now within 15 days. So it's a very small change, but the impact is huge, because realizing that in case an investigation has not concluded that the product is not implicated, you will have, in case of doubt, to report within this timeline, which is now 15 days. And it certainly depends on your product category, but for some product category, it is nigh impossible to carry out an investigation within 15 days. I mean, think about implants, for example, which are explanted and need to be returned so that investigation can be carried out. Think about consumer a product such as glucose meter, for example, which are used by patient directly and for which there is a scarcity of the data that you receive and very often a lack of quality of the data as well. So this deadline of 15 days for an initial report will result in a lot of additional reports. So it depends on your product portfolio again. So I would encourage you, if you have not done it, to do as soon as possible an estimation based on historical complaints, how many incremental reports, initial report you will have to file, because we will need to file resources for those, and this will be very important. In some cases, some manufacturers have estimated, and again, depend on the product portfolio, but I've estimated that the increase may be in the vicinity of 60 to 70% in addition to those already filed. So this is very important. The vehicle to report these vigilance events to Europe is to be discussed as well. A new manufacturing incident reporting form has been developed, and this form is available under PDF format, which is manual, I would say, and under an e-format, which enable to file directly XML report under an XMS extension, and these data being automatically uploaded in the database of the authority receiving this report. At this stage, we file incident to the country of occurrence. So Europe has 27 member states. So we will file, or we do file this report in the country where the event happened. If the event happened in Belgium, we file in Belgium. If it's in Germany, we file in Germany. This form, which is currently used, has been developed in view of a central filing into EUDAMED. So it's not fully functional yet, but eventually the reporting will stop being at the country level, but will be in the central European database. And from this database, it will be dispatched to the country of origin. The new form is, and this form is comprehensive. I would say it's a bit burdensome as well. And there is a few documents which the European Commission has issued, which is the help text specifically and change log, because the form is going through iteration, which help us to navigate how to fill it in. In this presentation, I've included what you see in purple here is the hyperlink of the various European Commission document. So if you have an interest and want to go in depth, you can directly access those documents. One of the next an important feature of this reporting of adverse event under the MDR is that it's coded. So I mean, most of the information in the form are not plain text, but are codes. And for this purpose, the MDR and IVDR use the IMDRF terminology codes, so the International Medical Device Regulators Forum codes. So these codes have been discussed and are in implementation already in Europe. Some of them have been mandatory in the previous years. So we have the event type code. So this is a code that describes what is that a fire, is that for a big equipment, is that a failure of any kind. This is the event type. Next, we have the evaluation codes, which is basically based on investigation to detail the result of the investigation, declined in 3 different annexes, and give you the code. The third one is patient outcome code, which are mandatory since last June. So this is patient health effect. So they describe the clinical impact on patient. And last but not least, we have very recently endorsed in Europe and made mandatory the part and components code, which came to effect and need to be used mandatorily for the final vigilance report since the beginning of this month. So part and components, what is the use of that? The use is essentially for the authority who review reports, because if, for example, you associate a failure to a part and components, they can see and try to map with other devices which may use similar components to have an early warning system, an early warning of a potential issue which can become wider. A very practical example of that, if you have, for example, a pacemaker, and this pacemaker uses a battery, which is also used by other pacemaker manufacturer, and this is very frequent. If the serious adverse event report tracks to this battery manufacturer and battery batch number, the authority will be able to cross-check and to identify if there are some other manufacturer which may be affected by the same failure. So this is what is in place now. UDAMED. I certainly have been discussing UDAMED consistently and recurrently in the past few minutes. So what is UDAMED? UDAMED is a central database. It's a central database which is for use for the authority, for the notified body, where manufacturer log data, and a part of it is available to the public at large. So there's 6 interconnected modules in UDAMED, which you can see at the bottom of these slides. And it goes from economic operator, registration, importer, distributor, UDI registration. Each device is associated with a UDI, clinical investigation, market surveillance, which is essentially for the authority, but also you have one pillar, one of the 6 pillars, which is vigilance and post-market surveillance. And as it was mentioned, some of the data, vigilance report, PSUR, SSCP, will have to be logged into this module. So where do we stand on the issuance of the report and the availability of the forms which would be UDAMED compatible? Well, there's been a lot of delay. So the regulation is enforced, but the supporting guidance and implementing act are lagging behind. So for the incident reporting form, as you've seen, it's up and running. But a version 7.3 is pending, and this version will be fully compatible with UDAMED. We expect this version to be available around summer. So there will be a change in the way we report adverse events. Vigilance guideline, which is a replacement of the guidelines that existed under the MDD and was called MedDev 212. It's late. The estimation on this guideline to be published is now a year from now on, so it's estimated in 2022. As a surrogate to the guidance being ready, the Commission has committed to issue a Q&A on vigilance, which will try to clarify some of the aspects without giving a full guidance. And this Q&A should be published, let's keep finger crossed, should be published before the date of application. Sorry, so that is before May 26 this year. The periodic safety update report has been a very bumpy road, and it's still being discussed between all stakeholders. The guidance is estimated July this year. It may be later, depending on how the negotiation and discussion goes. Field safety corrective action, a form will be prepared, but this is not scheduled with a specific delivery date. The same is valid for the field safety notice, which is a notice we send to a customer in recalls and SFCA, and the trend report form, which will have to be used in UDAMED. A task force has not been established yet. So very, very late in delivering of the supporting document. And in parallel, the European Commission announced this week that the UDAMED full implementation is now delayed to December 2022. So in waiting for this to be available, the document which are existing will have to be used. The requirement of the regulation are to be used, but there is a transition when we still will use the MDD process, such as, for example, reporting adverse events to the country of occurrence. Okay. Transitional provision, and we're going slowly but surely to the end of my presentation here. Implementation of this requirement, and this is a very important slide, because the requirements of post-market surveillance are applicable on the date of application for MDR and IVDR devices. They're applicable on the MDR date of application, which means that on May 26 this year, all the PMS module of the regulation will have to be complied with for MDR and IVDD product. But this is not all. These also apply retrospectively, if I may say so, to the legacy product, which are continuing after the date of application. So for MDD product, which will be continued as having a valid notified body certificate in May 2021 and May 2024, they should use and apply and comply to this MDR PMS requirement as of the date of application. And the same is valid for the IVDR, so IVDD product. So as you can see, the extract of the regulation, which is both in the MDD and IVDR, sorry, MDR and IVDR. Let me quote it. However, the requirement of this regulation relating to post-market surveillance, vigilance, registration of economic operator and of device shall apply and replace the corresponding requirement of that directive. So this means that all that we have reviewed, the various reports, the 15 days vigilance reporting, the new form for reporting, everything will be mandatory for all devices who stays on the market after May 2021. So this is very critical. For the IVDR, you have an additional year. This is from the date of application. But this means that all devices still being placed on the market will have to comply with these new requirements, even in advance of the end of the group. So this is very important to plan, because also this will need for system to be in place, and this will need for resources to be available. So a few final thoughts after having reviewed all that, and I realize it's been a download of a lot of information, which may hardly have scratched the surface, in fact. But there's multiple requirements and reports to be produced. There's resource constraints as well. We need to explore the opportunity to kind of automatize the process of issuing all these reports, that it can become a routine and will result in reducing the resources that we need at the immediate implementation, where the process is entirely manual. And here as well, learning from other industry who are handling big data may be very useful. PMS is part of the risk assessment, and this is going through the entire life of the device. In the past, we had a very simplistic way that we have pre-market, the submission file, and post-market vigilance and learning of incident. This is not true any longer. Post-market surveillance is embedded into the risk or the benefit risk assessment, which is carried out from cradle to grave. This is actually from the design of the device until the retirement of the device. And this is a change in philosophy with the new regulation. Most of the aspects, though, are not unique to Europe. They're based on international standards and documents. Most of them are documents which have been validated and published by IMDRF, such as the IMDRF codes, for example, which have been or are being endorsed in the geography. The US FDA at this stage accept and suggest to use the event type IMDRF code for medical device reporting. Also, there is an interesting document which is a technical report. It's not a standard, but a technical report, lower category of ISO, which is 20416, which gave a menu or a recipe for a complete post-market surveillance. So it's not applicable by law and regulation. It's only a voluntary TR, but this can be referred to. It specifically has very good advice on literature review, which can help to set up some system for assessing the benefit risk of our product against some of similar product already on the market. Also, and this is my personal thoughts here, but I think alignment between geography beyond the EU would be a very good move going further. It would enable better exchange of data. It would enable reduction of resources for producing reports. And it certainly would increase the opportunity to have very early warning for incidents that may reoccur and eventually better protect user and patient. Lastly, guidance from the European Commission on the MDR and IVDR are still pending. So each manufacturer needs to develop their systems, their SOP, their process under the requirement of the regulation. But it may well be that when guidance will be made available, this will have to be tweaked, and maybe this will drive update to this SOP and procedures that we have already put in place. So this is navigating the gray, and I'm sure you're fairly familiar in your geographies as well. Regulation are enacted, they are mandatory, but supporting documents may not be fully ready. So I would like to leave you with this quote from Niccolò Machiavelli. Niccolò Machiavelli lived in the 15th century, and he actually created a job which is political statesman. So he was the first full-time political statesman. And one of his quotes, I think, is very appropriate to where we are now. It's, let me read it for your benefit. All courses of action are risky, so prudence is not in avoiding danger, but calculating risk and active decisively. Make mistake of ambition and not mistake of flows. Develop the strength to bold things, not the strength to suffer. And I think this is appropriate to creating regulation by doing it and implementing as much as we can those regulations. I'm very confident that eventually, when all these will gel and will settle, and we will have all these supporting documents, we will have a system that will be ready to be used for many years. Don't forget that the old legislation, MDD, IVDD, has been used for more than 20 years. and this system will be manageable for manufacture once we have gone through the difficulties. We will have in place our routine, so this will be a system fit to be used and eventually will benefit patients, ensuring their safety for new and innovative products that we can place on the market. So this concludes my short presentation for today. I certainly would open the stage for question if you have any. I think we have plenty of time here.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Auclair. Does anyone have any questions? Please, you can ask directly or you can post it in the chat box and I can read them out.
This is Sharad. I'm not having any question, but sincere thanks to Dr. Philip for this wonderful presentation and deep dive. This is really helping to understand the post-marketing responsibilities and what is coming our way.
Yeah, I realize I've been dumping you with a lot of information, some of which may be new to you and will have to be digested. But don't be shy. If you have questions, there's no stupid question. There may be question I will not have answer to as well, but don't hesitate if you have questions.
No, this session will really help us to understand that how it is going to impact from a country regulation, because most of the time if the products are imported, how it will be changing our post-market responsibilities. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Hello, Dr. Philip. I want to thank you. Yeah. It's really informative and useful for all of us. This is Lydia. I would just like to go through one of the questions. You said that all forms will be mandatory for all devices in the market, even if it's after May 2021 for medical device or after May 2022 for IVDs, since the product is still in the market, and even if the product is not IVDR certified, it's IVDD certified. What about if the product is just left for a market until the end of the shelf life? So it's
that's a very good question. Months. That's a very good question for this transition. Thank you so much, Lydia. So in fact, you're absolutely right. I'm starting with the beginning of your question. Starting from the date of application of each regulation, May 2021 MDR, May 2022 IVDR, all product, including legacy product, which is old legislation product, which continue to be placed on the market under the grace period, will have to apply the entire PMS requirement. So it's not only the form, it's the reports, the PSUR, the PMPF, the PMCF, all this requirement will need to be in place. So this needs to be clear. And the form, the reporting form is already mandatory. So the reporting form is already implemented irrespective of that. Now, you raise the very interesting question of product which may already have been placed in the market before the date of application. And for those, they are not to follow the new provision. So yes, if you have a product which is placed on the market, I think you're especially interested in IVD. So a product which is placed on the market on under the IVD on beginning of May 2020. Well, this product is already on the market and will not have to follow the new requirement. That makes sense?
Yeah, well, that's great. So it means that once it is already in the market and it's following the IVDD, it will be there, but it will not follow the new requirements from the post-marketing surveillance and reporting submission. This is the most important, because it will be there maybe for a few months, maybe for 1 year, and then change import. We don't know. Things is
correct. Let me make it a bit more complex. Sorry, I'm thinking aloud here. Let me make it more complex. What we've described, placed on the market, not following the new rules, except if this product is considered legacy product. Because if it's a legacy with a valid service and continue to be placed on the market after the DOA, then the new requirement will include all devices of this category, including those which have been placed on the market before the date of application. But if this product category is stopped on the date of application, if you obsolete this product on the date of application, so this product will not go into the legacy period, then in this case, the old product, which don't exist any longer under the legislation, but have been on the market, will not have to comply with the new requirements. Do I confuse you completely?
Yeah, and when we consider this the legacy product or no, the legacy product is the one which will later on be certified by the IVDR. But
or not, or not. A legacy product is defined as post-date of application, a product under the old legislation which has a valid notified body certificate. And then it can continue until May 2024 to be placed on the market. Now it's up to the manufacturer during this period of grace to remediate this product and register it under the IVDR or MDR. If not, the product will be stopped at the end of its certificate life or at the latest in May 2024.
Yeah, that's more clear. So the legacy product is accordingly whatever it will be shifted to the new regulation, IVDR, or it will be discontinued because this is still in process. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Philip. That's really clear. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
Any other questions for Dr. Auclair?
You know, if there's no immediate question, I'm sure APACMed will distribute the presentation, and you may have follow-up question when you had more time to digest all the information. And if this is the case, you certainly can send them to you, Tanvi, and I can handle that through email if there's a need.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. So if there are no more questions during this session, as Dr. Auclair said, you can always send them to me and I'll forward it to him and be sure to get a response for you. So let's just, so I think we can just end the session here. Thank you so much, Dr. Auclair, for your insights, and thank you to everyone else for joining in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, and I would like to thank APACMed to have given the opportunity to make these two presentations. This was part 2 today, and it's always a pleasure to cooperate with you. And should you have any question or need in the future, specifically on the EU regulation, feel free to get hold of me. I certainly can be available for other presentation if needed. Another session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a very nice day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.